All right, let's just jump right in. Today, we are tackling an absolute giant of a book. I'm talking about a 400-year-old novel that's, get this, over 1,000 pages long. Our mission? To somehow boil down the epic, sprawling story of Don Quixote into one short, super focused explainer. Let's do this. So, here's a wild thought for you. Can a book literally drive you mad? I mean, that's the question right at the core of Miguel de Cervantes' masterpiece. And it's a question that one man, our main character, decides to answer not by just thinking about it, but by living it with his entire life. First up, a knight born from books. So let's meet our hero, shall we? The story kicks off with a guy who basically reads himself into a whole new reality. So here's the deal. In the real world, his name is Alonso Quijano. He's just an aging nobleman, living a pretty quiet life in La Mancha, Spain. But inside his own head, oh, that's a different story. After binging way too many fantasy novels about knights and chivalry, he transforms. He becomes Don Quixote de la Mancha, a valiant knight-errant on a world-saving quest. He reads so much that the line between what's real and what's in his books just completely vanishes. Now, you can't be a knight without the proper gear, right? Well, Don Quixote's setup was, let's just say, a little unique. He digs up this rusty old suit of armor from his attic. He takes his worn-out old horse and gives it a grand name, Rocinante. And of course, every knight needs a lady love to fight for, so he just invents one. He picks a local farm girl he's probably never even spoken to and dubs her the beautiful Dulcinea del Toboso. And his mission? It's just as bonkers. He wants to bring justice to the world and single-handedly revive the entire age of chivalry. All right, Section 2, Adventures in a Real World. So, with his new knightly identity all set, Don Quixote hits the road. And this, my friends, is where his fantasy world smacks head-on into reality. And it is often painful, but also pretty hilarious. Pretty quickly, he realizes he can't do this alone. Every knight needs a squire, so he recruits his neighbor, a farmer named Sancho Panza. And Sancho is the total opposite of Don Quixote. He's this pragmatic, down-to-earth guy. So why does he go along with it? Because Quixote promises him an island to rule. Seriously. So you've got this incredible duo. Quixote, the idealistic dreamer looking for glory, and Sancho, the realist who's just in it for the paycheck, so to speak. Where Quixote sees magic and enchantment, Sancho just sees the cold, hard facts. This whole dreamer and realist thing, it's basically the invention of the buddy comedy, and it's brilliant. And this brings us to maybe the most famous scene in the history of, all books. Don Quixote looks out at a field of windmills, and he doesn't see windmills. Oh no. He sees giants. Ferocious, monstrous giants. Sancho is screaming, no, they're just windmills. But it's no use. Don Quixote lowers his lance, spurs Rocinante, and charges. And you'd think he'd learn, but nope, it doesn't stop there. A little while later, he sees a huge flock of sheep, but to him, it's a mighty army, two clashing forces on the battlefield. So, of course, he charges right into the middle of them, only to get pelted with rocks by the very angry shepherds. And this becomes a pattern. Anytime they come across some shabby, run-down inn on the side of the road, what does he see? An enchanted castle, of course. He treats the completely baffled innkeepers and serving wenches like they're kings and queens, demanding all these ridiculous knightly ceremonies. You can just imagine their faces. Okay, moving on to part 3, when a book becomes real. So the first book ends with Quixote getting tricked and dragged back home. But this is where the author, Cervantes, pulls off a move that was, I'm not kidding, centuries ahead of its time. It's wild. So check this out. In the real world, Cervantes publishes part 1 of the book in 1605, and over the next decade it becomes a smash hit, a total bestseller all over Europe. So when he goes to write part 2, which comes out in 1615, he does something absolutely brilliant. He writes the book's real-world success into the plot of the second book. What this means is, in the world of part 2, Don Quixote and Sancho Panza are literally famous. The first book about their adventures exists in their world. So now when they meet new people, those people have already read all about them. They're celebrities. And instead of people just thinking he's some random crazy old man, they play along. They set up these huge, elaborate, and sometimes pretty cruel pranks on him, all for their own amusement. It's this completely mind-bending meta twist that just changes everything. Part 4, The Last Joust. As you can imagine, all this fame, all this manipulation, it all builds to a final, and honestly, pretty tragic showdown for our hero on a beach in Barcelona. You have to understand, even after all the defeats, all the humiliation, his belief in who he is never wavers. It's absolute. Listen to this quote from him. "For my part, I know who I am." He's not just saying he's a knight. He's saying his identity is so grand, so powerful, that he can be all the legendary heroes combined, and that his actions will be even greater. It's just pure, uncut conviction. So there he is on the beach, and he gets challenged to a joust by this mysterious character, the Knight of the White Moon. But here's the twist. The Knight of the White Moon isn't some random enemy. It's actually a friend from his hometown, in disguise, who has this one last, desperate plan to finally snap him out of it and bring him home for good. And the terms of this fight, the stakes are just immense. The Knight of the White Moon says that if Don Quixote is defeated, he has to do one thing: renounce being a knight-errant and go home for a whole year. This is way more than just a joust. This is a battle for his entire world, his entire identity. And he loses. Reality finally wins. He's defeated, heartbroken. He goes home, and the loss of that dream, that fantasy life, it just crushes him. He gets sick, really sick. And on his deathbed, in his last moments, his sanity comes back. He renounces Don Quixote. He says, "I am Alonso Quijano again." And then he dies. Finally, part 5, why Quixote still matters. It's a really sad ending, no doubt about it. But in a way, the death of the man was the birth of the legend. So the big question is, why on earth are we still talking about this book 400 years later? Well, for one, it's pretty much considered the first modern novel. I mean, this book was a total game changer. It tore up the rulebook. Instead of these perfect mythical heroes, it gave us messy, complicated, deeply human characters. It used normal, everyday conversation to dig into these huge themes, like what's sanity, what's reality. And maybe, most importantly, its main character actually grows and changes over the course of the story. That was new. And its influence? It's just staggering. The book has been translated into more than 140 different languages. Think about that. That makes it one of the most translated books in all of human history, right up there behind the Bible. His legacy is so powerful, it's literally part of our language now. You've probably heard the word quixotic, right? Well, that comes directly from Don Quixote. It describes that person you know who is incredibly idealistic, but also maybe a little bit unrealistic and impractical. That's him. And all of this leaves us with that one final lingering question. Who was Don Quixote really? Was he a fool? Just a crazy old man who couldn't handle the real world? Or was he maybe the world's last true romantic? A brave soul fighting for a better, more noble world, even when everyone else told him he was wrong. And that's the beautiful thing. Cervantes doesn't tell us the answer. He leaves it for you to decide.